Welcome back for more subtraction strategies. Today we're looking at Reveal Math Grade 2, Unit 10, Lesson 4, which is about counting on to subtract three-digit numbers. This is one of the homework problems, and I anticipate that this would be pretty confusing for a lot of parents. Partly because we didn't learn it this way, and partly because it kind of messes with your mind when you think about it a little more. I'll get into that in a second. So the main thing to understand here is that when you're subtracting, you are finding the difference between two numbers. So before we even get into this problem that I made up that's similar to the homework ones, I want you just to think about something like 8 minus 5. So what this is asking is what's the difference between those two numbers, and that's why the answer to a subtraction problem is called the difference. So we could start with 8 on the number line, and we could count back 5. This is the part that kind of messes with your mind if you think about it too much. So minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, and that gets us to 3, which we know is the answer to that. Another way of thinking about it is start with the second number, which is called the subtrahend, and we want to find the difference between these two numbers. So that's what this lesson is asking them. Previously, they were taught this first strategy to count back on the number line. Now they're being taught to count up, or to really find the space between those two numbers, because sometimes it's easier. Like given, you have to kind of look at the numbers and the problem to figure out which method is more appropriate for that problem, and it's also highly variable by kid. So if a kid prefers counting on, they can do that. If they prefer counting back, they can do that. That's all sort of in the future once they've learned these strategies, but right now they're learning this counting on or finding the difference between these two numbers. Notice I didn't say the smaller number and the bigger number here, because eventually they're going to get to middle school math and get into negative numbers like this. So we really should call it the first number and the second number, or if you wanted to be super precise, this is the minuend and this is the subtrahend. But your kids probably don't know that language, and it's not important to them right now. Just try to avoid saying the smaller number and the bigger number. Okay, so let's get into our three-digit numbers now. So I'm going to draw the number line again. I have 213 on one end, and again, in previous lessons, they counted back from 213 going like that. This time we are counting on from the second number, or the subtrahend. So I'm going to put 147 on my number line. And I'm figuring out what this space is between 147 and 213. How much is that space, or that difference? So some of the problems, like you'll see, the first couple problems on the homework have broken down that space or that difference for them, and it's asking kids to fill in these blanks. So kind of, to look at what's been done already and figure out what these blanks must be. And then some of the later homework problems in this lesson just have an open space for them, like this one. So they can really be flexible about how they figure out that difference between the two numbers. So starting at 147, again, thinking I can do this kind of however I want or however makes sense to me, I'm going to jump up by 3 first. And I could write a plus 3 there. Some math programs actually don't have students write plus or minus because it wants them to recognize that this jump you can think of it as either addition or subtraction. You're talking about the space between those two numbers. So anyway, this one is showing plus 3. That's what Reveal Math has them doing. So I'm going to do plus 3, and then I think a nice jump of 50 would be good here to get me to 200. And then maybe I'll do a jump of 10, and then another jump of 3. And that has me land at 213, which is where I want to land, because that was my first number that I started with. So now these numbers that show the jumps are the difference between 147 and 213. So I'm just going to add those up to find my difference here. So 50 plus 10 is 60. 60 plus 6 gets me to 66. So that's going to be the difference between those two numbers. So now stay with me if you want to have your mind blown for a second. So this, another way to think about this, which is what students were doing in a previous lesson, is counting backwards. So I'm just going to show it with this problem too. So if we start at 213, the minuend, or the first number in the subtraction problem, I'm going to try to take away now 147. So move backwards on the number line, 147. So let's see, I'll go a jump of 100. That gets me to 113. I'm going to do a jump of 13 because I want to get to a nice friendly number there of 100. And then I still have 34, I believe, to subtract. So I'm going to take away a 30 here, which gets me to 70, and then 4 more, minus 4, which gets me to 66. So what I did here, sorry, that's a 3 there. What I did here is I made, use another color here, made these numbers equal 147. So I took away 147 from 213. That gets you the same answer, the 66, as figuring out the difference between 147 and 213, or the space between them on the number line. So you might have just thought like, oh my God, subtraction has never been more confusing. I don't know why that works. And that's totally fine. That's one of the cool things I think about math, is that the more you think about it, the more you're like, whoa, this kind of blows my mind. So anyway, revealing my dorkiness here. So anyway, for this lesson, what we're trying to do is start with the second number in the subtraction problem, so the subtrahend, and count on the number line to get to the first number in the subtraction problem. So we're starting with the second number, counting on the number line to get to the first number, and figuring out the space between them, or the difference between those two numbers. Thank you as always for watching. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, leave a request for topics or grade levels in the comments, or other math curricula you'd like me to work on. Also, feel free to check out my Substack, Make Math Make Sense, and I added my email address here at the bottom for anybody who'd like to get in touch. Thank you.